We do have a quorum here, and Meredith texted that she is on the way, so I expect she'll be here soon. So I would like to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the Urbana Park District Board of Commissioners for September. And as I understand it, nobody's requesting remote attendance.
Correct.
So our first item of business tonight is a public hearing. And I would like to start that at this point. So the Board of Commissioners of the Urbana Park District, Champaign County, Illinois, now opens a public hearing beginning on the evening of September 10th, 2019 at 7:03 p.m. This hearing is being held at the Planning and Operations Facility at 1011 East Kerr Avenue in Urbana. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to announce the board's intent to sell bonds not to exceed $6,200,000 to pay the costs of renovations and improvements in Crystal Lake Park and building and or equipping a health and wellness facility or construction of various health and wellness projects throughout the district and for the payment of other expenses. Is there any member of the public who would like to make a statement during this public hearing?
Just the invisible man.
Hearing none, I guess I will make a brief statement, simply that what we are in the process of doing is refinancing to existing bond series in order to save a considerable amount of money in terms of interest. I think north of $800,000 in interest savings. And at the same time, taking this opportunity to refinance to make sure that we have some additional capital monies available for important projects, both in Crystal Lake Park and dealing with health and wellness. So we're hoping that we've found a very good, timely approach to refinancing where we will be saving some interest expenses and getting bonds let at a very good interest rate, because long-term rates are at a very good point at the moment. So at any rate, if there is no one else wishing to make comments to the board, I will declare this hearing closed.
I think we have to have a motion.
Pardon? Oh, we need a motion to do that.
I will move to adjourn the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the point? I believe we will want a roll call vote on this. So beginning at the right, Roger.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously, and therefore I will close the public hearing. And we can move on now to our next item of business, which is to accept or modify the agenda for this evening's meeting. And I'm not aware of any suggested changes. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries unanimously. And we now move to public comment. And is there anybody from the public here who wants to comment to the board on more general business, not just the hearing that we just held? And are there any no new staff introductions?
Correct.
So hearing no public comment, we can then move on to the Urbana Park District Advisory Committee report.
We've got Jean Paley, our current chair for UPDAC, here tonight with us. She's going to come up and tell us about what's going on with UPDAC.
What I wrote, because I know it's in your packet. But I want to tell you how wonderful it was. It was a surprise. A member of the public who came before you at a previous meeting to talk about Meadowbrook presented UPDAC with the same material. And after she left, one of the UPDAC members asked him, she said, "Aren't we supposed to have questions or be able to ask questions at this point. At this point, Nancy, as a member of the Board of Commissioners, and Tim gave what felt like seizing a teaching moment and following through in the best way humanly possible of the values of the Park District, how they handled feedback from the public, whether it was cranky or otherwise. The point being that members of the team cannot be everywhere 100% of the time, and when things are not going well, the Park District needs to hear about it, even if it's from somebody that's a little bit cranky. They did such a magnificent job. You would not want to have an introduction to an organization. You couldn't have one that was better. So that's what I have to say. It was amazing. And there were also, UPDAC has some new members that are astonishing. Young people
Mm.
who are already engaged in doing the kinds of things that are helpful and good for the community, and this is just another little layer for them. I fell in love with one of them. Is that okay?
It is okay.
Yeah, I think we've had good groups over the last few years, and I think one of the best things is that we have a wide age range anymore, which we just did not used to have.
Right. Mhm.
And it's really good. It's good to see, because I think that'll keep the group from fossilizing.
And I think it's important. I think that
Mm.
people, either as they age or as they age on UPDAC, need to move off and find some other way to contribute
Right.
and get fresh blood in.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jean? Well, thank you very much for coming out this evening and joining us. We appreciate it. And
I'm eager to see how you do business.
Great. Stay tuned.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things we talked about actually at the meeting, was that we maybe haven't done as good a job as we'd like in informing people who come to talk to us
Mhm.
about the way we deal with audience participation, and that we will work to do better at that. I don't know, certainly not in my time on UPDAC, has there ever been
I
a
don't
member of
believe
the
so.
public who's come. And
Right.
so it took everybody kind of by surprise. So I think we have to kind of get a little bit better at doing that. I mean, and it's just, one's expectation as a new UPDAC member would be, well, why didn't they talk to this person? Well, that's just how we do it, and we didn't explain it
Mhm.
until after it was over, and we should have done that before. But
I think you and I talked, Nancy, we
Yep.
would definitely address the group next month, and
yes,
certainly under director's report, I'd be happy to
Yeah.
talk about that.
yeah.
Just so how do we do that and handle public comment?
Right. I think what a lot of them hadn't really thought about was that it's real easy to get into a back and forth with
Right.
somebody who's coming,
Right.
especially someone who's confrontational. You could spend a lot of time talking, and they weren't seeing it that way. I mean, yeah, but it was fine. I think it went well, but I think we could just do things a little bit better than we've been doing.
Mhm.
One of the things that UPDAC doesn't do is make a policy,
Right.
and everybody should know that.
right.
Good point.
I mean, the board is ultimately the policy
Right.
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 body, and it is our goal to have cogent input from anyone, any and all in the public.
Correct.
That's the reason why that advisory committee has existed for more than 40 years.
Yep.
Right.
Almost 50.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't learn much if people just come and tell you what a great job you're doing. I think that's the other thing,
Right.
is that you learn the most from difficult situations.
But whether people were coming to the board or to UPDAC to express such opinions, there's always more than one side to a story.
Of course.
And
Yep.
it's extremely important for a board not to get so attracted into a description of a situation that may or may not be entirely accurate or may or may not match the viewpoint of other people involved in it. We want to pay attention, we want to hear it, and we want to make sure that staff follows up. And in my experience, they always do.
Yeah, yeah.
And do an excellent job of it. And we have often learned some very important things from people who came and were a little agitated when they got started, but once they were calmed down a little bit in a less public circumstance and could express their opinions, there could be some very reasonable give and take. And often things do indeed get adjusted in response to that. It's just not right at a board meeting. That's not a great place to do it.
Yeah, and we just need to remind them of that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thanks again for coming out, Gene. Moving on then to our consent agenda. On our consent agenda for the evening are approval of the minutes from the August 6th study session, the minutes of the August 13 regular board meeting, the receipt of the monthly reports from the three departments, approval of the monthly paid accounts payable, and action to accept the August 2019 philanthropy report and gifts listed with gratitude. So under the rules of our consent agenda, any or all of these items may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of a single commissioner. Is there any commissioner wanting to remove any of these items from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda in an omnibus fashion? The items on it in an omnibus fashion.
I move to approve all the action items on the consent agenda and accept all the information items listed on the consent agenda in an omnibus manner.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded, and under our consent agenda rules, there is to be no discussion, so let's begin a roll call vote. This time at the left with Alejandra.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. And that moves us along then to our financial reports.
Hi, everyone. Well, we made it through audit season, so the auditors will be here next month for you to accept the audit. Everything has gone very smoothly for the field work portion, and then all of August, basically, I spent writing the management discussion and analysis and reviewing all of the preliminary reports that they produce that are ultimately my responsibility and the Park District's responsibility to accept. So it's gone really well. And tonight I'd like to review briefly with you the financial performance for the district for August 31st, 2019. We're 4 months into the fiscal year, and the majority of our busiest season has now taken place. So the first report that I'll discuss is the fund balance report that's now called the Revenue and Expenditure Report with our new accounting system. The first page of this report lists all funds except for the Capital Improvements Fund. Kind of takes the Capital Improvements Fund out of the equation and just shows kind of more of our operating budget. The first column on the far left is the ending balance for the previous fiscal year. Then we have the budget for the current fiscal year, and then the performance for where we're at 4 months in on August 31st, 2019. So total revenues for this period were $4,800,000. We're at 36% for revenues. We've only received just over 50% of our property taxes. I need to look back at some AS 400 reports to see where we were at last year, but I think we're still a little bit behind. So I'm hoping in September they get caught back up, because we should be back on the normal schedule now. And I was we didn't even receive a property tax disbursement in August, and normally we do receive one basically every month. The amount fluctuates. So I'm thinking there's going to be a really big one in September, because that's when the second installment was due on September 1st. So I was going to maybe give them a call and just ask the status of that, because we're ready for it.
Just a comment, I mean, they still haven't taken the September payment out of bank, out of our bank
Oh,
account.
really?
Yeah, which surprised me a little.
Huh.
But
Interesting. Well, we make all of our,
It's hard to give it to the district.
yeah, that's right, that's right.
Katie's gonna be coming to your door.
Well, and I think they have rules or laws that they have to disperse it to the taxing entities within 30 days of collecting it. But if they haven't collected it, then there's nothing to disperse. So, you know, and I think, but everybody that's walking in with their payments and things like that, those should be turned over to the taxing entities. So, but as far as automatic deductions and things, yeah, that might delay it a little bit. But, I mean, we're fine. It's just, we're just ready for it. I'm just ready for it to be normal again. So it's just been a weird property tax year, and, you know, 70% of our revenues are property taxes, so it's a big chunk for us, and we rely on it hugely, so. Expenditures are all on track for this fiscal year. Total expenditures for this period were $2,900,000, and the net of revenues over expenditures at this point in the fiscal year is $1,800,000, so we're doing just fine there as far as where we're at, if you take our total revenues minus our total expenditures. Of course, that's all very front-loaded on revenue because of property taxes, and then we continue to spend it down the rest of the year. Capital Improvements Fund is on the next page. So far this fiscal year, our total revenues were $280,000. Total expenditures were $313,000, with a net of expenditures over revenues for this point in the year of $33,000. And that tends to happen earlier in the year until we get our regular distribution of our GO bonds, our rolling bonds. Then that kind of flips the switch. So, so far right now, that's where we're at. And we're gearing up for some really large projects, so you'll hopefully continue to see that trend of spending down some of this fund balance that we've accumulated, almost $2 million there. So the goal is to spend all of that money within 3 years, and so we're gearing up to do just that. The third page is both those front two pages added together. That gives you a picture of the entire district. And so at this point in the year, our ending fund balance for the district is right about $9 million. And following that are the summaries for the 4 main working funds that we have in the district, which are the general fund, the recreation fund, the museum fund, and the indoor pool. Now I'll move on to discuss the treasurer's report. The front page of the treasurer's report lists all of our monies and which accounts they're invested by fund for a total of $10,869,559.12. And that's for the exact day, August 31st, 2019, just that one day. On page 2, the top section lists monies that we have in interest-bearing accounts. So of that $10,800,000, we have $9,200,000 invested in interest-bearing accounts. So the rest of that is in our, basically our Chase operating account, and the other subsidiary accounts, our vendor and payroll accounts, waiting to be dispersed. I made a big move with, Dick came in at the end of August, and we moved about $3 million into Illinois funds. We're just getting such a better interest rate. You can see 2.2% instead of where it's been, which is Chase Savings at 0.28%. So we're just really trying to leverage that. It just takes a lot of attention from me to make sure that we have the money back in the operating accounts to spend when we need it as far as cash flow goes. So, but I'm willing to take it on. I just think it's the best for the taxpayer to leverage as much interest as we can. And Illinois funds is performing quite well, and it's almost as good as a lot of the CDs that we have. So I just think it's a good place to kind of park it when we're waiting to spend it. So that's what I've been working with Dick on. And there was no changes to interfund loans for the period, the bottom half of that page. And our disbursements on page 3 here were $944,000 for this period. And we had 3 payrolls in August, so that's a big portion of, and that's a big reason for why that may be an uptick of what you'd normally see. And plus, it's our busy season in August, so we're spending on all of those camps and outdoor pool operations and all of the things that we're busy with in the summer. And with that, I present the treasurer's report to you for audit.
I move we accept the treasurer's report for audit.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries unanimously.
Great. Lastly, I will just touch briefly on the areas in the capital budgets that had activity this period, and then Derek will take it from there to give you any other relevant capital updates. So in the 2019 capital budget, on the first page, we had activity and income and tributes and donations. And we also received our first half distribution of the OSLAD grant for Crystal Lake Park. That we received the $400,000 grant, so we'll receive half up front and then half on the back end as time goes on. So that's exciting that that's moving along. We had spending in the technology account. We purchased a laptop. A little further down, we had some wrap-up spending on the PRC playground. It was pretty minimal. We spent funds on ADA capital improvements, just transition projects, and also as part of that was some accessibility improvements at the Meadowbrook House. And following that particular line item, you can see we also had spending on the Meadowbrook Park House repairs ahead of our new renter moving in. And finally, at the bottom, the Blair Park Master Plan updates, or I don't know if they were updates, but the Blair Park Master Planning, we had this $8,000 expenditure on. In the 2018 capital budget, there was just 2 line items of spending. We had a little bit of spending on the James Room, and we're still waiting on 2 more invoices to close that project out. Even though the whole project basically wrapped up in June, it's just waiting for approval from, I think the architect or somebody approves those invoices before we pay them, and then one of the invoices hasn't been issued yet. So we're still waiting, and it was the sink issue, which is now resolved, but we just haven't made those payments yet. So that project's almost done. And then also on the purchase of the 1-ton dump truck, there was just a very small amount of spending to, it was like $300 on the radio. Yes, thank you. And in the 2017 budget, there was quite a few line items in motion here. Construction crew projects are spending out of this line, out of this budget. We had spending on ITEP out of the Trails projects line. And then further down, there was also spending out of the other 2 ITEP project lines from the grant funds and from the Carl contributions. That other amount that went to Trails was an additional amount. I talked to Andy about it when we were coding it there, because it wasn't included in the grant or Carl contribution amounts. It was an addition. It was a change order or something that was related to the ITEP project. So that's why it went out of that Trails money. And then far down at the bottom there, Crystal Lake improvements are underway. And there was no activity in the 2016 budget this period, but like I said, we're getting ready to spend this $450,000, so I just want to make sure this is upfront and in your faces so that we'll continue to look at it as time goes on.
Do you think we'll ever get to 3 pages here? Now we got 2.
As soon as we're done spending this, maybe.
Then we'll be back to.
Then you got another year.
Well, the next year.
Yeah, then we'll have the 2019 Geo bonds going, so what are you going to do? Now Derek may have some other updates for you.
So, Andy is homesick, so I'm going to help cover in his stead on project updates. First, I want to apologize for the temperature. We're still working on it. It appears that there's a switch that's been ordered. It's supposed to arrive tomorrow. Well, one day too late for you all, unfortunately, but this facility is now getting to the age where a few things are starting to come and due for replacement, so we're working on it. On capital updates, Crystal Lake Park Rehab continuing to move through engineering. We reviewed our latest round of updates with our engineering and staff group. A lot of it was focused on the OSLAD items. These are items that we added to the design work once we knew we had the grant. We're anticipating 90% designs within the next month, along with cost estimates, so we're getting real close. We're also planning on a public meeting sometime in mid-October to review all the plans. We know that we've talked with folks about Crystal Lake a lot in the last 3-4 years, but it's been a little while, so we want to have an update before we get into construction. And the current plan is to bid the project in November and award in December. So we're excited for where we're at on that project. The Saline Branch project, this is the one that's the remediation money for the fish kill that took place over a decade ago. We have received the money from the Department of Natural Resources. They came in this week, much quicker than anticipated. So we've let the contractor know that we're moving forward. We're scheduling a pre-construction meeting We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule at this point because they can't start doing tree removal along the saline until mid-October. That's a period that they need to hold off on until that point because of the potential for threatened bat nesting along those trees in the saline. But that project will be getting going pretty quickly here, so a lot of exciting projects coming in Crystal Lake Park. We're also wrapping up ITEP. The suspended work on the landscape portion is scheduled to resume on Monday. This was the work that they held off on because it got too hot and late in the season. So mostly landscaping, doing the raised planter beds at each end of the trail, doing some of the native landscaping along the shoreline, and then repairing all the turf throughout. There's also a little bit of other punch list items. There's a piece of cracked concrete right behind the raised planter bed that's at the corner of Broadway and Park that's going to get replaced. So that's going to look great here shortly. And once we're confident about our completion date, we'll be scheduling a ribbon cutting. We'd like to have Carl join us for that. Right now, their contract says work needs to be done by October 4th. Those are all of Andy's updates. We do have quite a bit to talk about on the Leo Park project. I'll wait until we award that bid later. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
It just looks great. I walked there over the weekend and it seemed like there was never a goat path, right?
I know, I agree.
That sidewalk was always meant to be there.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
it does fit well, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah,
It does, yeah.
Absolutely.
Looks good.
Ellen and I walk there frequently, and we constantly see people sitting on the
Yeah, on the rocks.
stone
Stones,
yeah,
slabs.
too.
It's just great
Yeah.
seeing it used and
Yeah.
enjoyed.
And it just looks
It's
good.
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's very appealing to the eye.
Yeah, even without a landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
I think how it'll look in a few years.
Great. Brings us to the executive director's report, Tim.
Great, a couple of updates. Let's see, what do we have here? Just wanted to comment on some of the couple of good articles in the News Gazette. The one was on birding and birding sites. Maybe they've done articles like that before, but I thought it was a first. And
I've never seen.
me either, and I was pretty
anything like that.
sure, and it was extensive. I hope you all saw it, but obviously the Park District and the sites and some of the photos were at our sites, so it's very kind of rewarding to know all that land preservation and creating habitat. There's a benefit, and there's a lot of people that find their recreation tied to that. So
Right.
I think that's really the other important side of that. So just pleased.
That same article had a front page about the boardwalk, and
Yeah.
there was up quoted on talking about our trail system.
Yep, yep. I think there were 2 articles. So I guess we got a little time in the newspaper, so that's always noteworthy and worth mentioning. Also wanted to mention, I saw Derek covered in his written report too, but we had a meeting with Warren Levy, who's working with the U of I Law School. There's a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Phi, that's interested, kind of a pre-law group. They're really looking to get some experience. We've worked with Warren, kind of became connected with him and his wife Holly, to Urbana Rotary in our Arbor Day and tree planting. The last 2 years, they've funded our Arbor Day program to allow us to do tree plantings and celebrate with kids. And so we've had a very good discussion, our first climate discussion. He and Holly joined us for that. I invited them. And so as a follow-up, he's interested in seeing what the Park District needs. And so we have access to a number of students that are interested in helping us look at other climate plans, resiliency plans from other agencies, to kind of get a template to see what would help Urbana Park District as we move forward. So really appreciate that. That's incredibly generous, and I'm sure they could have picked other groups or just overlooked us, but that he thought of us and offered us that help. So we had our first meeting, very engaging, and we'll continue with that. And I think some follow-up steps, I think we do want to go up to Cook County Forest Preserve and talk with their staff. They have a pretty extensive plan, and so we're interested in learning, what they did, why they did it, where they are, and working with the plan. Are they making progress? And just kind of get some more information of how we could shape our future plan out. So we're excited about that and appreciate the help.
I know it's early in that process, but I'm assuming that will come to us at some point.
Yes, of course, yep. And probably drafts, as we get information together. Certainly we'll be working with NAC and our green team and,
Okay.
the usual suspects at the, probably UPDAC, in the Park District. So all moving in the right direction. As I said, when we introduced climate change as a goal, more of a broad goal, wasn't exactly sure what we were going to do, but now it's starting to unfold and we have some project options, and I think we'll get some traction on that. Also wanted to report, had a first meeting with Dr. Jennifer Ivory Tatum last week, as our new school superintendent, had a very, very lively conversation, really excited, got a number of things to work on, shared our efforts and interest in a health and wellness facility, invited the school district to again look at what their space needs could be and if there's an opportunity to work together. Talked in more detail about the Weaver Park site, which I think the school district felt had a lot of potential as far as the location. Something Jennifer shared with me that I wanted to impress with the board is she was just emphatic that thrilled that we're taking a step, that we're trying to fill that void of there's no recreational indoor space really in Urbana. We have schools, we have Brookins, a few, opportunities, but not a comprehensive known, place. So she was suggesting her biggest concern is the unengaged youth from 3 in the afternoon till 10 at night. And she's saying we have to have an Urbana solution to begin to deal with that. We're not going to make, not that building a building is going to make that difference, but engaging in programming and creating events and activities that engage your youth is really, really critical. Certainly as a partner working with schools, they see themselves in that also. And I could see, having some opportunities, but we don't have those drop-in kind of places that youth would just know you can go anytime from these hours. And then she said, even if we had to squeeze it down to boil it down from 6 to 9, is there any opportunities in Urbana to fill that void? So I think the staff takeaway is, we're very energized with this opportunity to try to get something in place. It's that important. If you look at our neighbors, they have facilities like that. And it's not about comparing us and stacking up and all of that, but it's really about what kind of facilities does your community need to be successful and to turn some things maybe that aren't working in the right way. And again, a building isn't going to make the difference, but it's going to be the people that are at the buildings welcoming and engaging and getting our youth in another place. Obviously, we see opportunities for older adults, the whole family in our scheme, but just wanted to share that she applauds our effort, sees the need, sees the opportunity, and encourages us to continue in that pursuit. Again, we'd love to work with anybody that could be a part of that. We're still looking at some options. I think planning staff's updating, getting our RFQ ready to look at interviewing a couple of firms that would be helpful in that way, and that'll be underway. So we're just kind of keeping things moving in that direction. Another thing I want to raise the board's attention to is, we've had this discussion before. I've introduced it 1 or 2 times before, more on a light touch, but we're continuing to look at Prairie Play at Meadowbrook Park. And we're having some challenges right now with at least the curved green slide. Basically, things are deteriorating. And if you remember the way we built that, one of the greatest things I wanted to start out, when we built Prairie Play in 1995, it was a completely innovative, one of the first, what I'd call kind of attached playgrounds where you could run from one end to the other inside, and nothing else like that. We were really attracted to that. And, at that time it had all the cutting edge, multiple play, different sensory types of things, what I'd call the whole family access. Parents could go in with their kids and, engage with their kids on that. Since 1995 and, nearly 2020, a lot of things have changed in the play world. And so several of the features at Prairie Play aren't accessible. They don't meet standards on safety any longer. So the challenge we're going to have is we can't easily just go grab something and stick it in and it works, because everything is custom made, which is the beauty of that facility. It's a one of a kind. We've visited, as you recall, our last round of playground visits to look at specifically at communities that had Leathers playgrounds that either redesigned something new for the future. So we had that, now we have something different. We learned their story and their outcomes. Then we visited a couple of communities that wanted to retain it. And so they repaired it. I think our takeaway was it kind of looked like a repair job. It was kind of shimmed up is the best way I could. It didn't look fresh and new, and while it might have been sturdy enough, it just didn't have that, clean design look. So our questions were great. You could extend the life, presumably, with that, probably with some cost and some replacement. But what happens after those fail? And then what do? Are you at some point? So what we're suggesting is we want to create a process, a dialogue, and have a narrative to explain to our public where we are right now. We know if we start taking things out of the playground, it's probably without any information or process, it would maybe concern people, hey, what's happening? In our capital plan, we don't have a space for funding until the 21, 22 year, when we're able to plan and actually build something and open, a new opportunity there. So we've got a couple of years where we're in a gap, and we certainly don't want to follow the Blair Park approach where we just slowly peeled things out of that park on the play side and didn't have a go-to, plan or like even a window when that would be replaced. We're doing that now, and we're really excited, and so is the neighborhood about that. But we know how important and how many people come to Prairie Play. It's not just an Urbana destination, it's a regional destination. People come from all over. We visited with Monticello maybe 2 years, year and a half ago, and they had a similar, it wasn't Leathers branded, but they had built their own. It was similar, Wooden Wonderland.
I thought it certainly looked like.
That's my understanding.
It looked
Yeah,
like
it looked like one, interesting.
And they had taken it out and decided, a lot of the wood replacement and, the deteriorating wood was more than they could, handle. But we saw a very engaging, beautiful site. They had their community involved. They went through a process. Some people were sad and, less than happy with the change, but they have a fantastic replacement. We saw that in other communities. I think what we're suggesting is create a process to ultimately let Urbana decide what kind of play experience they think is appropriate at Meadowbrook. But what do we do in this in between? So we're suggesting we might need to replace a few small things if we can fit things in safely, put a few replacement elements inside there. But we've got to create a discussion, some sort of information to let people know that we're entering this transitional period. I think we can't start too soon, because if we come up with a final design, we don't have dollar resource then that's a dull thud for the community to wait, and don't expect them to hang on for 2 years happily. But what we want to try to do is preserve what we have, replace what we can, but also look to the future. Things we could start doing ultimately when we're ready is start engaging playground designers to come and show us what's new and what we can do there. Go visit some of these sites that we've already visited, hear it firsthand. Work with UPDAC. Maybe it'd be a terrific project for them to learn about what's the latest, greatest in play in the state of Illinois. And then start to engage ultimately with designers to put together a plan that we could engage with and replace Prairie Play. Nothing lasts forever. Playgrounds, most of them, if you get 15, 20 years, that's really a good timeline. So we'll have exceeded that at Prairie Play. I think, again, some things we're concerned about is people really, from the very get-go attached to that site, people help fundraise by making some of the pavers with the handprints. And so there's kind of an emotional attachment. My own kids grew up in a generation, that's where they played. So we have family connections at that site. Yeah, at the same time, we know, like Carl Park, where we had a all-wood structure, it had to be replaced. And so transitioning into whatever that next thing is, we just want to create a process and a way to engage folks. Comments on that? That might be, I have one more item, but
2 years actually it doesn't seem that far away.
yes.
And it seems like with that's such an important play structure in the community of Urbana, that it would also be something to talk to about with the foundation in terms of
Right.
moving. If we wanted to talk about, could we move the time frame ahead? But 2 years is not that long.
Yeah,
I mean,
it'll go fast
it
once
will.
we create a process.
But it just seems like a great opportunity to partner with the foundation for additional fundraising.
Staff thought about that too. It lends itself to
Yeah.
that kind of project where people are attracted to it and would want to be a part. I should add too, we have some other responsibilities at that site. The existing parking lot is probably had its years, coming up with a replacement or some sort of treatment on the parking. Looking at overall design, in that front end of the park, we have some opportunities. We have some old lighting. The lighting over the playground is actually the construction field lighting that we used to build it, and we've never replaced that lighting. It's adequate probably for safety and security, but certainly a evening lighting scheme would probably make the park area, look and feel a little more attractive and safer. So we want to make sure we have enough adequate budget planned. I think it would be a great grant project. Assuming we still have OSLAD grants going at that time, would probably have the, point systems built in to respond well to a grant request.
Tim, just two things I want to mention.
Yeah.
One is, I suspect that there's very few 25-year-old leather playgrounds out there.
Oh, I
Our
agree.
staff have done an amazing job of working on preserving that
is true.
structure. But we are starting to see some bigger failures, and this slide is one of those examples. We're going to be bringing in some playground reps to look at what we can do to replace it, but it can't just go back. It no longer meets modern playground safety guidelines. All the clearances and tolerances are off, and we're going to see more of that probably in the next 2 years, and we want to begin documenting that so that when we go public, we're able to talk to the public about those challenges, but also really show them that we've taken really good care of this structure. It's just time.
Right, right.
A couple comments.
Certainly.
I know that, I don't know how many years ago that Vicki May, when she was executive director, said it's time to replace Prairie Play, and that's,
Yeah.
so this
Yeah.
has been a need that's been a while. The other thing, I would suggest that you include someone in early childhood that's involved in the planning process. I know there are a number of people that are retired early childhood people, but they know the standards and they know they know what's good for, particularly for young children.
Sure. We would appreciate that too. Yeah, speaking of that, we see an opportunity to put together a really dynamic team of a wide variety of backgrounds, really to kind of take this on as a community opportunity. So again, looking at the communities that have already done this, I'd say the majority have ended up going a different direction, but they're really pleased with what they had, but they love what they have now. And so I guess my point on that is you can land on your feet on the other side. It's not the end. It's really just a new beginning. And so to hear from and engage and allow a process for new families with young kids to, be involved. My family got that chance. We got to have our input and, see what was there, and our kids grew up there. But it's that next generation or two that we're looking at. So we'll continue to work on that, but thought it'd be good to let the board know. I think when we start making some transitions, we might get some concern or a call here or there. So we certainly want to create an information stream so we don't have a vacuum of, hey, nobody knows what's going on, and then rumors start or untruths start going around the community. So our attempt isn't to tear Prairie Play down or get rid of it, or we just have some repairs we need to deal with. We're probably in a situation, as Derek said, we can't just ignore non-conforming pieces. We had that discussion, would we be grandfathered? Maybe you wouldn't, perhaps in some stance, but if you knew it wasn't meeting standards, you wouldn't want to risk anybody or anything. I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think come up with an alternative that's safe would be a better approach. And again, some of the things aren't necessarily apparent because from the street or once you come in, it looks great, although we've actually taken a few pieces out already. There's been some modifications that have been done over the times. But most people won't assume that, and so we have to make sure we, from the ground level, tell that story. So employing Mark in the Park and getting stories out there in the front, maybe celebrating, talking with people that were involved in the early days and having their stories told, and having new people tell us about what they'd like to see there in the future, I think will help us. But we don't have a complete process worked out, but those are the things we're aware of and we're moving toward and we want to work on. We think if we do that, we'll at least be the best prepared that we can be. And, it's not dead yet. It's still usable. It's still open. But we're trying to avoid that, oh, gosh, we just have to close the whole thing right now because we wanted to.
We don't want another pool experience.
Right. And so we think engaging up front, letting people know there's going to be changes. It's still safe, but let's be aware that we're working toward a future on something. So there's something to look forward to.
Right. I, of course, have many ideas about this park. I think about it a lot. One of the things I was thinking just now was that if we're going to replace something, we ought to start out with as much of a wow factor thing as we can to put in to give people an idea that we aren't going same old, and that we're looking for something new and really interesting. And it'll give them a sense, I think, of something bigger and better coming in rather than just
A
the
diminishing.
destruction of their loved place.
Right.
I had a discussion with the oldest grandkids when we were there last, 13 and 11 essentially, and they love it, but they are too big for
Right.
it. Physically, they are too
Right.
big for it.
We agree.
So one of the things I would like us to really think about is that next height
Yeah.
of kids,
Right.
because that's we've talked a lot about entertainment for older kids, and that's something that we're missing, and that's the perfect place
Right.
for it, because we've got some space for it. I'm thinking that since this is not just a park district park, it's really a community, Champaign-Urbana, Champaign County kind of park, that this might be a place for us to look for money outside of Urbana. I think I think that if we came up with I'm thinking of one of those monstrum wooden animals that we could pick out a real signature piece for that park and use that as a fundraising goal, because it would be, I mean, those things are wonderful, and they fit well with park things. I think I'm going to put together
I'm not
Monstrum is the Danish design company, and they have a lot of wooden animals. They have lions, they have whales, they have praying mantises, they have toadstools on tall poles. I mean, they just have all sorts of really wonderful ideas. And this is such a terrific park that I think it deserves that quality of things, and not just the high end of what the usual
Right.
playground people can give us. And I think that if we can ask an area-wide community to help us make this, I don't think it's out of line to do that, because it's enjoyed by so many people, and
Right.
it had that kind of basis originally as really community,
Right.
Champaign-Urbana, at least
Right.
community-wide.
I think Meredith's point about engaging with the foundation would suggest
I know, they're just
that
fabulous.
and backs that up.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, the staff idea that, we kind of created custom WOW play experiences until we built Prairie Play. It didn't really exist in the area. I guess I'm going to
Yep,
brag and say we did it.
Yep.
I don't think the public would expect less from us now. And so
Right.
your point about exceeding expectations is we're excited about that.
Right, but the difficulty is that unless you're a park playground kind of person,
Right.
you have no idea
You
of
have
the
no idea.
fabulous ideas that
Right.
are out there. I mean,
Agreed.
Tim sent me one of the ones someplace where they had islands with trees, just like a pallet-sized thing. I assume they were chained to the bottom, but just with a tree on it. I mean, there are lots of really cool, innovative, international park ideas that aren't so far out of our finance range.
Right.
I think we just have to broaden
Right.
our thought horizons, if you will,
Right.
to come up with something beyond what we're used to seeing. And I
Right.
think that we have to educate the public
We
in
agree,
the
too.
possibilities.
Right. I know when
Not that I'm interested in this.
when we went to visit sites, we didn't know what to expect, but we were pretty impressed. And I wouldn't say they were like custom designed.
Right,
where
right.
they, where you take that opportunity to engage with somebody to custom design
right.
a site. They were manufactured, but they were still amazing. They were, really wow stuff. So that encouraged us to know there is going to be life beyond this. You could go a lot of different directions and probably be successful. So we're excited about that. With no other questions on that, I'll keep going. One other thing I did want to mention, just as follow-up to let the board know, we've met with staff in both areas with our organic garden program and our aquatics. Started to go back over some of the comments we've heard and get an approach plan together. We're recommending we engage in a series of focus groups. Typically, we wouldn't do that necessarily if you had some public come to you, but we touch a lot of people with aquatics. We have two very different pools, and we have very different audiences that have different activities that they do. We think it's important to get the diversity of comment so that we hear from many different groups. We have competitive swimmers, we have divers, we have recreational swimmers, we have what I call recreational, just floating in the water kind of people. We have swim lesson. So there's a whole range, master swimmers, a lot of different user groups. We have competitive teams that come and rent space there. So I think we'd like to hear from everybody in both the garden sites and aquatics. So we're going to get a proposal from Jared Scheineman to see what we could put together, what we can afford to do. But we had two great meetings today and talked about all the possibilities, and we just want to really explore that so that we can be responsive back to the public. I think we'll talk about it. I think it's on the agenda for next month's study session, so we'll go over some of the pool stuff, maybe start talking about that. But speaking of pools, I think Corky's got some updates that you're probably interested in hearing about.
Yeah, just real quick, the summer started off a little rough with the weather, but I am excited to let you know that our total visits, this is just membership and daily admissions numbers. We had 48,138 visits this year. Last year, we had 48,300, so within 162 visits. That doesn't count any of our program numbers, the 220 Nadiators that came every day. So we'll get final numbers as we finalize things this coming month. Revenues and expenses, again, we just closed the pool, so it's a little early to tell you. I can tell you that revenues and expenses are tracking really well. So once we get further down the year here, I can give you an update on that. But all in all, it's like a pretty good year.
That, considering how up and down the weather was, that's fabulous.
It is
Yeah,
fabulous.
it's just incredible.
I think that
That's great.
consistency is really important too, because what we often found when we visited pools, everybody tells you about the meteoric rise up with a new, but then there's often a leveling and a decline. We've been able so far to keep that level, still early in our history with this new pool, but the goal of reaching, the same standards each year is really important to us. And I think we're on a good track, so.
Yeah, and I don't brag a lot, but I do want to toot our aquatic staff's horn a little bit. It was a rough summer gathering staff and keeping staff. We were able to keep our facility open all the time when we told everybody we would. That's been harder for other people to do. So kudos to them for a lot of it goes to our full-time staff because they were lifeguards, they were managers a lot. They spent a lot of time there. We definitely need to look and see what we can do to get more part-time staff in the future. It's basically going to come down to pay, I think, based on what those individuals can make at other places. So we'll be investigating that, looking to see what we can do to recruit more staff and keep them working the whole summer. We started out pretty good, and then they wean off pretty quickly. So kudos to the staff for being able to keep a 4-star facility as well. They did a great job in all their audits. Had 1 5-star and a couple 4s. So they did a fantastic job of making sure that things were safe and we were open. So.
And it was a remarkably diverse staff.
Yes.
That's the other thing I was really glad
Yeah.
to see. It's just, and it's getting more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people,
Which I think, yeah, I
people
mean, I think
notice,
that's
they
just,
comment.
once you start, I think then it just kind of grows. And so we've made a good start, and I think it's just,
Right.
it's gonna get better and better. And I didn't see very many people that I thought weren't more than competent at what they were doing. I mean, I thought it was a really good staff this summer, so.
We started getting surveys back, and they're
Oh, yeah?
coming in really pretty positive. So
Good.
we're always a few little negatives, but that's good because that gives us things to work on and improve upon. So
One question we did want to try to talk about in the focus groups is maybe the idea of changing our hours at the end of the evening from this. Currently, we're open until 8 o'clock. We see a huge drop-off from 7 to 8. Champagne's doing it also. I think we even looked at the possibility, could we both alternate, like the suburban communities? One closes at 7 one week and the other. The problem is we don't have, or at least currently don't have a dual or a joint pool pass system, where if you live, Hinsdale, staying late, this one closes. It's a significant cost, though, to think of all the guards and just, what it takes to run it for an hour. If there's just a few people there, we want to make sure we're using our resources, wisely. So that will probably be one of the questions we want to try to at least get across or get some feedback on.
And that taper starts to happen once school starts or earlier?
it's actually
Yeah.
pretty much the whole summer.
Oh, really?
We had that discussion, is it from May to July 4th? Is there steady? And what we're hearing is, no, there's not as many. And then certainly after that, there's even more drop off. So just finding the right number of hours a day that seem reasonable.
I always thought it was the best time to come to the pool. Between 7 and 8.
I'm
Not
only a
many
swimmer
kids,
too.
like, "Oh, room to bed."
Right,
Perfect.
right.
And there weren't so many
Right.
people there.
Right.
Yeah,
But if, if it's something that's important to residents, then we'll
Right.
continue to look at how can we provide that service. So certainly not in the business of taking away just to take away, but generally to curb or rein in some cost. Lastly, just want to mention, we installed a new sculpture at Meadowbrook Park in the Wandale Sculpture Park area. It's got an interesting name. It's bipolar attack formis interruptus, and the artist just calls it bipolar. And so we're calling it that also, just for short name.
That's
But
kind.
if you come up the Hickman Walk as you're going out to the Wandale, you'll see it slightly to the right where Swift was located. But the artist is Charles Yost, interesting gentleman, older sculptor. I met him up at the Chicago Sculpture International event up at the studio at Sedgwick Studio. One of our current sculptors, Janet Austin, is the president of CSI right now. So when I came in, she saw me and immediately introduced me to Charles. He started to right away saying, "Oh, Urbana's got one of the best programs. I'd love to be there." And so we started talking, very easy entree and into setting that one up. But within, 15 minutes, he was sold and we had an arrangement. So that was always nice when you can find good artists, good art, in a venue like that. So there's worthwhile reason to be there. But delightful person. He's just easy to work with, and we're really pleased to have his work. It's very different and kind of a unique look for the garden. That's all I had, but I can answer any other questions if you have any.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate how quickly that maintenance can get those pedestals in and get the sculpture on.
I agree.
We were puzzled by the name of the memorial plaque that
Yes.
went in by the
Yes.
Organic Gardens.
Yes,
Because that took a little longer, but what a nice piece.
it is, and we're really pleased to have that too, because we can recognize more people and
Yeah.
keep track of that. So, great.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to the president's report. In terms of upcoming meetings, I think Tim's already mentioned the study session on October 1st, focusing on the aquatics programs and facilities. And then on October 8th, the regular board meeting will be semi-annual review and status of strategic initiatives, the annual audit, which always takes some time, and action to accept the comprehensive annual financial report, and then a review of tax levy options for
Oh, our
the,
favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
right, getting ready for the the black box.
Oh, Michael.
I don't have anything else to add this evening. So moving on to liaison reports. The finance study group actually last met in the end of June, so I think all the information that went past that has already come to the board actually on multiple occasions, so not a whole lot to report on that one. Moving on to the policy study group, is there anything to report there?
We haven't met.
And
Alice is gonna reach out to try to schedule a meeting in the next month or two.
And the Urbana Parks Foundation representative, Roger?
We met yesterday. I'm pleased to report that Ellen had already received 70 RSVPs for the pre-Jazz Walk reception, and we were encouraged, if you know anybody that might like to come to that would be interested in the foundation, please feel free, but let Ellen know that for planning.
This was about twice as many as we'd ever had before, right?
It's
Yeah.
a lot,
It's a lot
yeah.
more, yep.
It's a lot. And then a couple things to put in your calendar that are coming up. Probably the holiday event will be December 12th. That's not all the way set, but that's probable. It's going to be at the Analog Wine Bar, which is north of the Courier. On On February 22nd is the Big Splash, focus on youth scholarships, and that's going to be held during the time that the pool is ordinarily open. And we'll be charging the usual amount, but if people want to round up what they pay when they come, that money will go to our youth scholarship, or to the foundation's youth scholarship program. So we're encouraged to kind of promote that. The annual dinner is set for March the 12th. It's at Stone Creek. And then the Barn Bash is at the same barn on May 15th. And if you would like to be a sponsor for that, or if you have an organization that wants to be a sponsor, whatever, it's $500, which isn't all that bad, to sponsor that and raise money. And then the last thing, and I was pleased that this happened, Fred Del Coleman, our chair, talked a good bit about the importance of improving the diversity of the foundation board. And Carolyn, who is the, I don't remember her last name. Trimble, thank you. Who is the head of the nominating committee, would really like to get suggestions for people to be on the board, particularly that might increase the diversity of that foundation board. You can contact her, or you can contact Ellen, who can contact her. If you have some names, she seems eager to receive those names, and I think that can only be good for the foundation. So
Community.
yeah, exactly, to make it more reflective of the community in which in which they work.
So March 12th is a regularly scheduled board meeting.
Oh,
I thought it was a Friday night.
maybe I have the wrong date.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
That's
the
a
event-
Tuesday, if it is. Oh, wait, you know what? I'm in the
Am I
wrong
right?
year.
Oh,
I thought it was a Friday
It's a
night.
Thursday.
Is it a Thursday?
It's a
Okay, I know it
Thursday.
wasn't
I was trying
a
to add to
Tuesday.
my calendar, but,
it's okay.
okay, never mind, sorry.
I think it would be helpful to have all those dates included in an email to the
Yes.
Yes.
board.
I think we just got them yesterday.
Yeah.
The events committee reported and
Oh, yeah,
had the
and so-
information to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
We'll put those in the president's calendar, though, if that's helpful on the schedule.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. That's it.
Any questions for Roger? Okay. Then let's move on to UPDAC Planning Study Group. And-
We met on August 19th to discuss the rest of the 2019 and planning for the first half of 2020 as the overall scope for UPDAC. It was a good meeting.
Yeah, it was
Was.
a good meeting.
I
Yep.
enjoyed it.
And I think we could have easily filled up all of
Yes.
2020 with the
Yeah,
ideas that
for
we
sure.
had.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on, there was no old business removed from the consent agenda, so we can move on to new business. And the first item is action to accept the Urbana Park District Strategic Plan 2020, the
Great.
subject of our study session last
Yep.
week.
Just Kara is here. She'll be talking with us. But just reminder, last study session, we had a full review of all of the strategic plan and the details. Our plan was listen to comments. We got a few feedback items. Staff adjusted the plan. And I think the approach was to put it on the agenda for acceptance tonight. Kara's here and can answer questions or give us any updates.
Yeah, I thought I'd just run through a few of the changes that I made, not every little tweak we did, but a few things that you may want to know about. So starting with page 4 and 5, I just wanted to point out that I added an appendix for the graphic facilitation posters. That was mentioned that they're really engaging pieces, but it's too small as part of one page. So now the one that's on page 5 and also the graphic facilitation poster that was part of fall staff retreat, both of those are in their own appendix, Appendix B to the plan. So these pieces I don't know if you've seen the one at the Nature Center, but one is 8 foot by 4 foot and the other is, I think, 8 foot by 10 foot. So they're massive in real life, and then just shrunk down to 8.5 by 11 for our plan. On page 7, I did some work to the charts and got rid of the image and just tried to overall make it more readable, and so that when we're presenting data, you can actually see what the numbers are and engage with it a little bit better.
Thank you.
Yes, it looks
Looks
much better.
good.
Thank you. I held this up for my wife. She sitting in her chair, me in mine, and she could actually read it, so appreciate that.
Awesome. On page 11, under the goals and objectives, one of the tweaks we made was to the objective A, and we called it multilingual capabilities instead of just translation services, because we're really trying to do more than that, just different ways of communicating via apps and phone services and translation also. On page 12, goal number 3, objective B, we had a lot of discussion about going out to people and engaging people where they are. I added a few things, just 2 new neighborhoods or locations within district boundaries, because that was something really important, that even though we may be at the edge of our boundaries and serving a wider variety of people, that we really are staying within our taxpayer boundaries and using our funds there. And also performance measure, it used to just say 2 throughout the whole process, and we talked about either doing somewhere from 5 to 10, and so 5 would be 1 per year. So we expanded that a little bit, even though it could be a stretch with all of the other things we're doing. It was mentioned that having goals that we strive and have to reach for is a good thing. And then I'll point out on page 16, one change that was made for health and wellness was under goal 1, objective D, the performance measure. We changed it to provide new health and wellness space instead of construct, because there's a variety of ways in which we can actually make expand upon our health and wellness space.
Thinking.
On page 18, under our trails and connectivity pillar, goal number 2, objective A, we talked more about the trails celebration and holistically what that is, and making it more welcoming and inclusive of what we're actually doing, and not ribbon cutting specifically. And then I'll have you turn to page 20. 20 and 21, we updated the chart and just the top line,
Oh, right.
in which we made a better description of what is really in those columns. So it used to just be total cost, and this is total estimated cost, because really we can't know exactly what everything will be at this point in time. Potential source of funding, so this is places where we could receive the funding, not necessarily where it was earmarked for specific things. And then time to completion, just to be more specific. It used to say duration.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to say thank you for being part of the process all the way for the past 2 years. Thank you for taking the time to give feedback, specific feedback, and not just saying, oh, it's good, or, oh, I don't like that, but what and why and how could I change it? And I just really appreciate all the updates that were made after our meeting and all the time that's been put forward from you.
Well, thank you for the time that you put into it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
And
a lot. It's,
Yeah.
really,
Amazing.
it really looks good. I mean, being receptive to, even small technical things, but, overall, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say, I mean, there was some trepidation at least on the part of this board member, in undertaking something of this importance and this magnitude and doing it in-house, while all the other duties are still there every day to be taken on.
right.
And I gotta say, this is just a fabulous result. I mean, you've more than exceeded expectations, for at least mine, over the process of this. And I know you, Kara, have played a very large role in making sure that all got coordinated and carried through. But it was a lot of staff time that went into this to a very good end, I think.
Thank
think
you.
that one of the things I like best about it is it is a really useful document to the community. It's not 6 feet thick. It's very well done. It's very thorough. It covers the things we want to do, but in a nicely concise manner. I mean, I think doing it in-house gives you that potential because you don't have people who are
Right.
trying to sell their
Right.
the wonderfulness of their product. And we did what we needed to do for us, which was the most important. And because I think that the staff has such panoramic views of their jobs, that it's something we could trust them to do. Because it's not like you're saying, oh, we did this and we're gonna keep doing more of this. You as a staff are always looking past what you've done and how can we do more and how can we do more better. And I think that's really shows in this document. That's
I think the
wonderful.
other staff groups too, the feedback I've heard is they feel more invested in this plan.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't really involved in our last plan. Certain staff were, but lots of, staff weren't. And so everybody at least had a chance to have some input, see themselves,
Yep.
see where their area, could be employed. I think just the engagement on some of the ideations really made a big difference. People got connected at our last year's staff retreat. Carol had a great process and it was awesome. And I think people really created that out of, just their own ideas, so.
Kara, are you not another intern? Did you start out as an intern?
No, I started out as planning assistant and then transitioned to park planner.
Okay.
And then I was recently blessed to get a certification, a planning certification too, which I think just added to what I was able to do and engaging more people. So
She did that on top of the strategic plan, so she's
Right.
been very busy.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Interned with Farnsworth, developed the Trails Master Plan for Monticello and a lot of other great work.
Right.
Yep. Congratulations.
thanks.
What I like about the document is it's inviting. You want to read
Yep.
it.
Right.
And that's nice. I think your use of photographs and artwork invites somebody in to look closer.
But not but detail isn't lost, information isn't lost, and
No,
that's the best thing, because I've seen some like this that are, glossy and wonderful, but there's not a whole lot of information, and this is pretty
Yeah,
dense
I know
in
what you're
terms of
saying.
information. And that's, because there's no point, I think, in putting
Right.
out something glossy just to put out something glossy. I mean, this is a useful
Sure.
document.
It's more than infographics.
Yep.
But it has
Absolutely.
infographics
Yep.
employed,
Yeah,
so.
yep.
I think staff's assumption is the board would accept the plan. It'd be our formal plan of record.
There is this
Do we need a
problem.
motion? You ready?
Indeed.
I move to accept the Urbana Park District Strategic Plan 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? I believe that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting.
You know how we just accept donations with gratitude? I think we
Right.
have to accept this with gratitude as well. Yeah,
you.
it's
Awesome.
really a great
Thanks,
document.
Kara.
Okay, our next item of business is action to award Leal Park parking lot expansion.
Sure. So, a little background, and for the folks at home, at Leal Park, for a long time, we're fortunate to be able to have some overflow parking at the property at the corner of University and Broadway. Race. Yeah. And the site was recently developed, and in anticipation of that, we began looking at options and alternatives to expand our existing parking. In the interim, we've been leasing space from the owner of the gravel parking lot on the south end of Leal Park, some distance from our administrative center. We looked at a number of different configurations. Initially, we thought we might go south off the existing lot, but ran into some tree issues there. Also felt like we lost some of our accessibility and connectivity with the Leal Park facility, the cottage. We went back to some initial plans that were done by BCA, where we were extending towards the east and felt like that was really the best direction to move into. Got into into engineering and actually bid the project, had the city of Urbana reviewing it, and they came back with noticed that a variance would be required to do that work. And in fact, the earlier parking lot that went in perhaps didn't even have a variance. And so worked closely with city staff to look at what sort of requirements would be needed with that variance, petitioned the city for it, and that variance was issued just last week on Tuesday. And so we had staged our bids so that we could open the bid shortly thereafter. Thursday morning we had our bid opening, and probably had our strongest bid response on a pavement project that I can remember in my career. 9 different bidders bid it. So maybe there's some wisdom to delaying a bid opening for a variance. We had a lot of the usuals, but also some new folks that bid it. Our low bidder on the base bid was substantially low, much lower, in fact, than the engineer's estimate. And when we opened the bid, there was sort of a stir in the room. A few folks questioned under their breath that were bidding for other construction companies how they could do the work for that. That same company did not elect to bid any of the bid alternates. And as we were reviewing our priorities, we had established a priority that we had at a minimum wanted to be able to award bid an alternate 6 and potentially bid some additional work as well. The fence was a possibility. We had been realizing as we moved through the process of the variance request that IDOT was delaying their project. And so some of the connections with the multi-use path off University Avenue, we were less interested in awarding at this time because we would potentially have to put in work that'd be later tore out. But we felt pretty firmly committed to at least getting being able to award bid number 6. And so after looking more closely at the bids, we realized that our lowest overall bidder for the base bid and bid alternate number 6 is Muser Construction. Again, a new company to us. Did a little background checking on them. They've done some good projects. In fact, Corky's worked with them in another aspect and feel like they would be suitable for this project. And so we're not sure what was going on with our low bidder in terms of why their number was so low. We did talk with them a little bit, and sounds like they're just artificially pressing their numbers down to try to get some work in this community. But when we explained that we really needed to award the landscaping with our single contract, they understood. And so we would recommend that we move forward with awarding a bid to Muser for the base bid and bid alternate number 6, and then also including a contingency of 20%. So I think the full recommendation is in your board packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just wanted to add what a great job planning and operations staff, all the staff and managers, supervisors did. This was sort of like the cottage mold situation. We didn't see it coming, and it just hit us when we had other projects and things. It started, I think I looked out the cottage window at the path, and somebody was coming down the old path that we had through the park, and they kind of stumbled on something, and I thought I better go out and look, and really just noticed the path was just in bad shape. And so Keith and Shane came over, we looked at it and kind of agreed that day we have to do something. And that was kind of the start of, okay, got the path done. Then our property changed on the east side of us, and finally, and then that was sort of our go-to parking, and we found temporary parking, but we needed a permanent solution, and it wasn't something we could just kick the can for 5 years easily and come up with a plan later. And so through looking at budgets, working with Katie and everybody, just engaging is whatever we could do to try to create a room for another project. So appreciate the timeliness and getting at the essence of just what we need. I think the end result is a much more functional site, and it also anticipates the changes that we've incurred there, and also anticipates a future trail network that's going to really help get people connected along University Avenue. The current path through the park is already being used. It's sort of the downtown cut through, and we love it. It's great. We've had more visitors in Leal Park than we've had in years. So it's working, and I think it's attractive, and now we just need this last piece for our parking for safety and access and people visiting and vendors. We looked at other alternatives, continuing to keep what we had, and they just weren't long-term solutions, that provided easy access and safety for the people that work there and visit at the cottage. So I appreciate
It was
this.
a really interesting process, because really the staff at the cottage were our stakeholders. Oftentimes we have a public that we work with on a project like this, and even within that group that works closely together, there are a lot of different values, concerns, interests, and we really feel like the plan that we put forth is the best. We still have the potential to come back and do some of these future additions. The IDOT path, the connections with the IDOT path could be added at a later date. If we find that we need the fence in addition to the vegetated screen, that could be added at a later date. But we feel like we really hit the core critical needs between the base bid and alternate number 6. I should also mention that our second lowest bidder for the base bid and alternate 6 was still below the engineer's estimate by a good measure. So we're still getting a very good, fair price. Probably really, what we would want to pay for anytime you have a bid that's substantially below the engineer's estimate. You really worry that they missed something, they're going to be cutting corners. You're just not sure what's going on. So we feel really solid about the bid that we're recommending.
And we're not concerned about the landscaping bid, because that seems to be all over the place.
There's a lot of variability there.
There's some, in terms of just comparing, the mid 60s seem to be the normal range for the concrete work. But then the landscaping, somebody's either subcontracting because they don't have the capability. There's just
My experience on landscaping, we often do get variability.
Okay.
Just there's a wide range. Where do they get the plants? How are they doing it? Are they managing the work? Are they subbing it out? Maybe not the best answer you're looking for, but I have noticed over the years variability.
I think the higher bids probably
Yeah,
were
mostly I
subbing it
just-
out.
Yeah, I
That-
imagine that myself.
I think the higher bids were subbing it out.
That
whereas
makes
the lower
sense.
bids are
That's what
not.
you're, yeah.
Trying
We
to find-
know that Muser does a lot of subdivision development.
So
and
that makes, they have
yeah.
experience
Right.
doing that,
Correct.
all of it.
Kind of
Okay,
an
that makes
in-house
sense.
product.
Yeah.
And I think Derek's right. We ultimately tried to, what do we absolutely need to have there? And I think we've skinnied it to the most essential things.
All right, well, I move to reject the low bid from Concrete Inc. for inconsistencies in the submittal by not providing a bid on the selected alternative option number 6, and to award the second low bid in the amount of $65,478, with alternate number 6 for an additional $9,150, for a total bid of $74,628 for the Leal parking lot expansion and pathway improvement project to Muser Construction and Excavation, Inc. of Paxton, Illinois, with the contingency of $20,214.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, starting at the right with Roger.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting in the affirmative. And what is the likely schedule on this at this point?
We'll let them know we're ready for a pre-construction meeting right away. I imagine they're eager to go, until we sit down with them and get an idea of their schedule. But I'm thinking this will be complete by the end of October.
Oh, okay. All right, we have no new business removed from the consent agenda, so we're down to comments from commissioners.
I just have a quick question about the bid process. Do you guys facilitate a bid opening and the contractors come in, or do they drop them off and you guys unseal them and go through them?
They're always welcome to sit around for the bid opening. On this one, most were in attendance. It was a full room.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that doesn't always happen. A
Right.
lot of times people just drop off bids and go, where they mail them in, particularly like playground bidders. They
Playgrounds,
tend to
that's
mail
what
them
I'm
in because they're
thinking.
from afar. But
sure.
it's always good to have people in attendance, and just shows that they're interested in the project and want to see what the competition is and who's coming to these bids. So this one was very interesting. Yeah.
And particularly, I mean, it's not a huge contract.
No.
Right, it's
yeah,
small by
Yeah.
most standards.
There's a lot of construction going on in town. I think Corky and I were
Yeah.
speculating that it may be that because a lot of the bigger construction companies are occupied,
Yeah.
the smaller companies are looking to expand. And I think
good.
Yeah.
both the bidder that didn't submit a full bid and Muser are from just outside the area, but we're excited to develop
I wanna
relationships with some of
mention
these other groups.
Yep.
Yeah, there was an article in the News Gazette today. Did you see that about all the construction work and the concern of bids going higher? Obviously, as we look forward to future construction, we hope the climate's favorable, but we'll see.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I think we've exhausted our agenda. Now declare us adjourned.
Great, thanks, everybody.